Well, Kevin, talk about this. This one's been a long time in the making.
Yeah, this is a player actually that I and Pat Onstad started looking at when we were in D.C. still. We were actually looking at another player on his team, and he really caught our eye. He's a great young player. He's a starting member of the U20 national team for Argentina, which that's a pretty good pedigree. He's got 50 or 60 first-team games, and he just turned 21 in December, so we're pretty excited. He's a real modern midfielder. He covers a lot of ground. He's a real box-to-box midfielder, as they say.
Can you tell us about, obviously, a young designated player, how, with the season already underway, how that works and how much against the cap that salary will be, if you can tell us that?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna get into the specific price against the cap, but it's a lot less than a regular DP. It's almost half. So there's a lot of advantages to having a young DP.
What is it about him, besides what you just explained, that you can see that he will fit into Toronto FC as you continue forward?
We scouted him very heavily. Pat Onstad saw him, I think, 4 times live. Fran O'Leary saw him twice live. Everybody on the coaching staff has watched him multiple times on Y-Scout. So we feel like we know him pretty well. He's an all-around midfielder. He's very, very tenacious defensively. He covers a tremendous amount of ground. He's terrific closing on the ball. But then when he gets the ball, he's an outstanding passer. Probably his best quality is he finds the attacking players with the ball very quickly. He's not a guy that will pass the ball over distance. He's not going to spray, 40, 50-yard balls, but he can bypass the initial midfield pressure and find our attacking midfielders or our wide midfielders in a way that we've, frankly struggled a little bit with this year. Sometimes it takes us, when we win the ball, and we're very good at winning the ball, sometimes it takes us a long time to get forward with it because we have to play too many balls sideways. He's a very incisive passer, and I think the fans are going to like him a lot. He plays with real intensity and conviction, and he suits perfectly the way Ryan wants the team to play in the midfield. I hope that you've all begun to see a style defensively in the midfield, the way we step on certain kinds of passes and the pressure that we bring and the blindside pressure that we bring, and he already does that. He understands that, so we think he's going to be a really good fit and a guy who's going to be impactful pretty quickly.
How do you bring him into this lineup? I mean, the first question is, will he be, when's he going to be available, this weekend, and if not, how do you massage him in, kind of?
Well, that's really a question for Ryan, but we do expect he's not going to be available for tomorrow's game. Obviously, we won't get the transfer finalized until Monday, but he should be available for next week's games, for the second leg of the Canada Cup, and then for the weekend game in MLS. So, how Ryan fits him in and when he fits him in is up to him, but we didn't bring him here to sit on the bench, that's for sure.
It's a bit of a departure, Kevin, in terms of, past players that you've signed this year have been signed to short-term loan deals because you didn't want to sort of commit resources before you could sort of, see how they would fit in. Are you that confident that, because it is a major investment here?
Yeah, it's a big investment, but we do feel very confident. Obviously, his age helps us make that decision. And he's a player that, listen, I'll tell you the truth. I think that a few years ago we never would have had a chance at this player because he probably would have gone to Spain. But with the Spanish economy the way it is, they're not in the markets the same way that they were. And so he now becomes a player that we can target. We feel pretty confident. Obviously, nothing's ever 100%, but we've watched him a lot. And all of our coaches have watched him a lot. We encourage a very democratic process when we're talking about talent. And everybody was in agreement on him and in agreement independently. So, Pat Onstad is a guy whose I trust a great deal, and so does Ryan. And he loved him the first time he saw him, and he just said, this guy's going to really translate well to our league. So how he fits in and when he fits in is up to Ryan, but we're pretty confident that he's going to fit in.
Can you say anything about the length of the deal or what the future plans are for him? Or?
It's a multiple-year deal. And he was a player that was in quite a bit of demand, so that's one of the reasons that we weren't able to do him on a loan basis. I think in every instance that we can, we would prefer to do a player on a loan first to make sure that it's going to work. There's a lot of great players that have not necessarily succeeded in MLS. It doesn't mean that they're not great players. Sometimes it's horses for courses. So when we can, certainly we're going to try to do loans so that we can make sure the player is going to fit. In his case, we couldn't, and we just felt that he was too important a piece, and we wanted to jump on it.
Do you want to comment on the transfer fee? Can you confirm?
No, I can't. I'm not going to comment on the amount. It's significant, though. I'll say that. I'm sure it's the biggest transfer fee that this club's ever paid. Most of the DP acquisitions in our league have not involved a transfer fee.
Right.
And actually, you asked before about the DP, the young DP. The whole point of the young DP rule is a recognition that in order to acquire this kind of young talent, we will have to pay acquisition fees. And that will, in the way we do our accounting, that does drive up the annual cost of the player significantly. But they aren't necessarily, now we think Laba is, but in some cases, they may not necessarily be prepared to be impactful players in the league just yet. It may take them a little time, as opposed to, a Danny Koevermans, who is a seasoned pro and can walk right on the field and do a job. So the whole recognition is that this is a little different dynamic. Acquiring a guy like Matías Laba is different than acquiring Torsten Frings. So it is a significant transfer fee. It's one of the larger transfer fees in the history of the league. It's certainly the biggest one in our history.
So it's fair to say you expect him to make an immediate impact or work his way into the
Like I said, we didn't get him to sit on the bench. So we think he's a player who's going to translate very well to MLS.
What about the Rudy deal, which was reported and talked about for about a month, and what eventually happened with that?
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. I try to understand their point of view on it. We had a deal signed. Rudy signed a contract. We had an agreement signed with them. The terms of the agreement were all agreed to. The timing, everything was agreed. The only thing that had to happen was they needed to actually, sign the transfer document. That was supposed to happen on April 15th. That was a date that was negotiated back in early March with them. And what happened is they've had a very good year, Newell's. They are 1 point out of first place in the league. They were qualified now for the second round of Copa Libertadores, and their primary forward, a player named Skoko, who's been the leading scorer in Argentina this year, broke a bone in his foot. And so suddenly they said, we can't let Rudy go now. We still would probably talk with them if they came back to us and said their Libertadores chances are probably pretty much over. They lost pretty badly at home in the first leg to Vélez. So it's unlikely that they're going to go through to the next round. We would still talk to them about a Rudy if they wanted to come back to us and offer him. But in the meantime, we're looking at other options.
You said there was a contract signed. I mean, how do you go about just breaking that contract suddenly?
The agreement was contingent on signing of the transfer agreement. So there was a contract signed. It was a contract signed with him, but it was all contingent on them signing the final document. And I was disappointed in the way they handled it. I think they should have been more forthright with us. But, we're not going to burn any bridges. He's still a player that we like a lot. And if it becomes reasonable for us to talk with them again about him, we will.
Were you kind of all in for this guy, or was there a backup plan?
No.
Who else do you bring in?
Well, it's a tough time of year. Our window's open till May 6th. The problem is that anybody you get a player from, they can't replace that player because all of their windows are closed. So we have looked at, and we still are looking at, a number of players. I think our between Pat and our coaches, we're probably reviewing 4 or 5 players pretty seriously right now who could still come in before the first week of May when our window opens. But, I don't know how likely it is. It's challenging to do that now. And obviously we're looking at a lot of players for the summer.
Kevin, the other Kevin from Bolton, we were talking a lot about that and him saying now he wouldn't come over till at least the end of the season. When that window opens up, any movement on that?
No, I think that if Kevin Davis comes, it'll have to be in the summer. He couldn't get over a kind of a negotiating hurdle with Bolton. It really had nothing to do with us. We were just bystanders, but he has the potential. If Bolton gets promoted, he has presumably the potential for a pretty good bonus, and he didn't want to burn his bridges there, and he felt that he couldn't sign some of the documents they were asking him to sign to leave early. So we understood. I mean, there was a lot of money at stake for him. He's got long ties to that club. So we'll talk with Kevin again in the summer. If we haven't found another better option, we'll consider Kevin at that time. Kevin obviously is a very specific type of player. It's not really the way we play, but it'd be nice to have a guy like him with his experience and his qualities to give you some different options in certain situations.
Those 4 or 5 guys you're looking at hard right now, are you hopeful to get those in before May 6th? Or
well, I'm hopeful, but I'm not. I'm hoping. I'm not necessarily hopeful. I think that it's a challenge to get that done before, because as I said, these teams can't replace those players at this point. So if they're an important part of their roster or their numbers count. Now, what we are hoping in a couple cases that several of the teams we're talking to or looking at they're really not, their position in their league is pretty much set. They're coming down to the end of the season. They're not going to qualify for any further play, whether that's in South America or Europe, and they're not going to get relegated. So we're hoping that they may say, okay, fine, we'll let the player go now. But we don't have a lot of control over that. So I would say the odds are that we won't get anything done before the first week of May, but we're turning over every possible stone to try to accomplish that.
And those are all players from kind of the same area, South America, or is there?
There's 1 or 2 guys from Europe. Well, and there's 1 or 2 guys that are South American, but from Europe. So, but we are, other than Kevin, and there's a couple of guys that are different types of players, such as Kevin. But most of what we're looking at are guys that are from South America and have a little more flair, a little more Latin in their game. But that's more positional. It's not that we have a particular bias toward one part of the world. I happen to think that South America is a better place to shop. I think you get better value for money.
Any progress on restructuring any of the deals you had talked about 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, we've done some things, and then there's a program that this will happen probably more for next year. But there's a program the league instituted called the Retention Fund, which is in a sense it's extra allocation money, but it can only be used to re-sign certain types of players. So it needs to be younger players. They need to be at a certain point in their contract life. And the idea is to help clubs keep guys in the league, promising players that are important to teams. So we have a couple of guys that qualify that we would like to keep. So we may try to use some of that money to offset some cap hit. But as I said, it's probably more likely that happens for next year.
Are you waiting on Danny Koevermans to see how he will come back and in his progress before you make moves on other players?
A little bit, but not really. I mean, and as you know, that became a little more of the conversation when we looked at a guy like Kevin Davis, for instance. Some of the other players we're looking at are different kinds of forwards, where even if Danny was back, we'd still want that player. Danny scored 2 crackers yesterday in training, so we hope that he's making progress, and we hope that we'll see him on the field, before too much longer goes by. I know he's pretty anxious to get out there.